Yo guys, I'm rolling on live, going through a bunch of questions which I received from you over the course of this week. One of them is about plateaus. The first one, this is awesome. What are plateaus and how to crush them? Thank you. Well, I think plateaus are a myth. Here I said it. I think plateaus don't exist. You may disagree with me if you want, but hear me out. Plateaus do not exist. There is no such thing as something jumps on you or appears in front of you out of nowhere, stopping your progression. It just doesn't happen. Unless you suffered a traumatic accident. That's one of the things. But that's not a plateau, that's a traumatic accident. So what I'm saying is that whenever you're experiencing plateaus, it's guaranteed that it's one of the followings. Either you didn't plan, and because you didn't have a long-term plan, now you run out of short-term actions which you could gather from the back of your mind, and so you're just repeating the same shit, and so you stop getting new results, right? That's one. Two, that you did have a long-term plan, but you're not watching for the things which are changing in your surrounding. You're not monitoring the progression of that long-term plan. I don't know, let's say you have a long-term plan of reaching your 300-pound deadlift. That's one example. Okay, so you know that you need to start, at the moment you're lifting 100, right? That's your staple, 100, 5x5. So you know you start 5x500. Next week you're going to go 5x510 or 150. Next week you're going to go 5x520, 125, right? Oh, sorry, not 5x5. So you're going to go 5x500, 6x450, 120, then or so, something like that. And then 8x2, 125, 120, 125, right? You've got this plan, and then you take a deload, which is 75, 5x5, and the next week you start fresh again, but not from 100, but from 115. And you know that this is a long-term plan, it might work. It's supposed to be working. That's the staple of, that's just a basic advanced 5x5. You should be able to follow it. But then as you go forward, you might be reaching 130, 135, let's say 140, and you're starting to feel your knees, you're starting to feel your lower back. Now you don't want to stop, right? Because you've got a plan. You got to carry out with that plan. And so what you do, you just ignore and push through it. And soon enough, you reach 150, and that's it, you stop. You've got a plateau, you cannot grow, you just cannot lift more, it doesn't matter. You do the 150, let's say you reach 155 by 5, it's good, but you cannot go 155. That's it just doesn't move. You just don't feel confident, right? So what happened here? Well, you hit a plateau on 155, you would say. So you can say, look, I'm looking at 155, I plateaued, I want to get over with it. But that's not what happened. What happened is that you ignored all the signs from 140 up to 155. You ignored all the signs probably from 130 when you started to feel that something is not okay with your form. You completely ignored it up till the point when you actually couldn't carry away, but you couldn't get away with it anymore. It's done. Right? So it's not a plateau. It's you ignoring the things which you need to change or improve in order to keep progressing. So you have a plan, you stick to that plan, but you're not able and not willing to control your circumstances enough so that you can carry out that plan. That's not going to work. Brick-headedness is not going to get it done because you're pushing yourself. So you're constantly going to find things which are not good enough. Right? If it would be as simple as just carrying out with a simple, basic 5x5 plan from 100 to 300, everyone would be deadlifting 300 without any question. In fact, you would be deadlifting 300. There is a reason you cannot pick up that weight. There is a reason you don't feel confident with it. There is a reason you're scared, because parts of your being are not capable of handling that load. And by just simply overloading them, you're not going to get there. You will need to change your posture, you will need to change your mobility, you will need to improve on your muscle imbalances, you will need to improve on your mental state, you will need to improve on your theoretical knowledge of the actual exercise. You see, there are millions of things you will need to work on the side, apart from doing the actual program. And there are millions of things you will need to take and put into that program. That's why a basic lifting program for a deadlift or for a squat is not made of squats. Actually, squats are more just for testing and practicing than for actual load. The actual work happens with the accessory exercises, with those lunges, with those calf raises, with those hamstring exercises, with those swings, with all that kind of little tiny exercises at the end of the training session, where you would address the problems and the imbalances which are starting to crop up in your training regime, which you know they are about to plateau you. So it's not really a plateau. It's your inability to adopt. And so that you run out of options and you hit a wall and you cannot progress anymore. Right? And then there is the third one, in which case you're not plateauing, you just don't know enough. And that happens as well. That in order for you to reach that 300-pound deadlift, you need to know things about the deadlift you don't know. You need to know things about the deadlift which only 300-pound deadlifters know. And since there are not a lot of 300-pounder deadlifters running around in commercial gym, you're probably stuck. There is no one to learn from. In that case, you need a coach. Done. You need a coach who knows it. And so you work through your plateaus. So it's not really like, although I'm using the word plateau, but it's not really a plateau. It's more like the combination of these three, or one of these three, or more of these three, right? So you're looking for not having the knowledge to complete the lift, or ignoring or having ignored the signs that you're going to run out of room to act, or not having a long-term plan in the first place. And so whenever you're about to plateau or you're already plateaued, you need to assess your situation and your approach to your goal and see if you committed one of these three crimes. And I swear to God you committed more of these three crimes. Right? So if you say none of these are true, then you have a problem. Then you have a problem of you not understanding what you're doing and what you're going for. So then your goal would be to keep assessing your situation until you recognize one of these three issues. Okay, so that's about the plateaus. Second question. Yeah, that's a lovely one. Yeah. So the question is, why do I need to keep my toes forward in any exercises when my feet is on the floor? Well, there's controversial information out there, and scientifically, technically speaking, you don't need to keep it completely parallel and completely forward, but it's really hard to find the angle. So the way I teach it, I just tell you to keep it completely parallel. And you see, if you come around and see the training programs, there's a massive storm out there and kids are running from school back home, and it's quite funny. So you'll see that some of my athletes are pointing out slightly with their feet, and I don't stop them. I allow them. In fact, there are certain cases when the athlete would be pointing out as much as 30 degrees, and I wouldn't stop. I would let the athlete to carry on what he's doing. And the reason being is, as long as the knee is aligned, I'm not so much concerned about the feet position. Okay, so if you look down to your knee when you're on the bottom of a squat, you should see your big toe. If the knee is over the big toe, covering the view, then you're in the wrong knee position. You need to shove your knees out a little bit. Now, why am I saying that you should keep your toes close to parallel or parallel? Is because the muscle that controls this external rotation of the hip, allowing you to push the knee out to the side, has a very limited range of motion. And it's the same muscle that turns the feet outside. So if you turn the feet 40 degrees, right, or more outwards, you're shortening that muscle to a point when you won't be able to activate that force to push the knee out because you run out of range of motion. It's similar to trying to do a bicep curl from this position, right? When I'm flexing my bicep, as if I had one, I wouldn't be able to do a curl from here because I'm already running out of range of motion, right? So that's kind of the same thing. If I'm trying to lift something overhead and I'm here, I won't be able to push from here because I'm already at the range of motion. So I need to set up in a way that the bar is here or the object is here so I can actually press it. Right? That's what I'm saying. So when you rotate your feet outside too much, you run out of room to push the knees to a safe position. And so that's why I say you should keep the feet forward. And this is not the second question. I was reading through it. It's down the line, but it's connected. Why do I nudge people to keep the feet under the shoulder? It's the principle of specificity, which states that any exercise you do has to resemble the movement or the sport you're training for in the first place, otherwise it doesn't translate. So the exercises you're performing only translate to movement which are of similar movements or performed from similar positions. So when we're talking about walking, running, jumping, sprinting, any sport-specific movement, right, the feet is under the shoulder. You're not jumping up from the feet way out on the side. You're not running marathons from your feet way out on the side, yeah? Having your legs spread way out on the side in a spready. You're not doing dashes and sprints in a spready. So the legs are contained within the vertical plane of the human body. And so that's why when I coach you the jump, when I coach you the squat, recently I started to ask you to pull the feet in. Now, it might be a little confusing for you, but for squats, we work on two goals. One of them is the actual deep squat. So for a human, you need to be able to perform full deep squats, knees shoved to the side. And for those exercises, the feet position is very much personal. So I wouldn't touch that, right? If you want to go really wide, if you want to go real narrow, it's really, really up to you. I wouldn't play with that. It's just the way you set up, it's just the way your mobility is. In fact, with the deep squats, the wider you go, the more you stretch. So in some sense, it's better for the exercise and it's better for you. But then when you're training for the jump, when you're training for the sprint, for the run, when you're training for an athletic movement, you really want to contain the feet within the vertical plane of the human body, because that's where you want to use it. So if you're training for jumps with legs spread out, then that training, that movement will not translate to the jump, because the nervous system doesn't understand, doesn't connect the two positions, if it makes sense. So as soon as you set up in one posture, the exercise is performed in another posture, they don't really translate unless you bridge them together. And you cannot bridge a spready squat together with a jump. It just doesn't work. You can bridge certain exercises together. You can bridge a bench press with a throw. You can bridge that together because it's similar movement pattern. You can even bridge an overhead, a suicide throw with a jump, because that's also it's a vertical plane, similar movement pattern for the torso, for the body. But you cannot bridge a wide squat with a narrow jump. There is no connection between the two. The ground connection is fundamentally different. So that's why I ask you in certain exercises to connect your form. And I'm running out of time, so there is one more question. And this is something I constantly have to explain during the session, so I'm very happy that you guys are asking it. It's about the pogo jumps. Why do I teach the pogo jumps the way I teach it? Well, how do you do the pogo jumps? Well, when you do the pogo jumps, when you're training for the pogo jumps, and when generally you're training with shock method, right? When you do a shock method exercise, I always say, now this is a shock method exercise, right? So a box jump is different from a drop jump. A box jump is not a shock method exercise. It's a power exercise, but it's not really plyometric. The drop jump is a plyometric exercise, and you notice we're doing plyometrics when we decrease the height. So when we get, sorry, I need to let the cat in. It's raining, yeah? Alright, thank you for watching my live video so you can see me letting the cat in. Of course he's in, it's raining outside. So, what was that? Yeah, so when we are reducing the height of that drop, that's when we're going towards plyometrics. The purpose of plyometrics is essentially to train you to be able to explosively absorb force. And the key word here is explosively. I don't want you to land and soften. I want you to land and block, right? And that explosive blocking is the one what allows you to minimize your ground contact time, and you revert the movement back with power. Wait a little. Yeah. Look at that. That's what I have to deal with every day. Stay there. Yeah, I'll feed you after the video. So that's the purpose of the shock method and the plyometrics. And for this we need to decrease the height because you have a lot more impact on the joints. So it's kind of like the possibility of injury is much higher, right? So that's why when you see we're decreasing that jump box, that's when shock method is coming. It's called shock method because you're shocking the body by impacting it and exploding back up. Now, this is the principle behind the pogo jump. So when you do the pogo jump, I really don't want you to absorb that force smoothly. I don't want you to push off and then land and then push off and then land. What you're doing, you're effectively hating the floor, practically, and you're trying to, every time it comes closer to you, you just hit it away. So you're not doing the eccentric portion of the jump, you're constantly just pushing up. You're pushing up with your toes and ankles. You're not using your knee and the hip for the movement. You're just pushing away from the ankle. So every time you're landing, so this is the floor, every time you hit it, you just push up, push up, push up, push up. That's all you're doing. Okay, so with this, you're minimizing the ground contact time, which will help you to become faster and more explosive from the floor. And you're also training your body to absorb impact naturally, which is extremely important, because if something sudden happens to you and you need to absorb that impact of the fall, right, then there are chances you won't be able to prepare for the proper position. But if you train your body to absorb sudden impacts in a safe way, then you're good. Then you're okay. And also when you're doing jumps, repeated jumps, triple jumps, or high jumps, or sprints, right, you don't really have time to prepare for every single time when you impact that ground in a fast sprint. So you kind of need to train your nervous system to be able to handle that extra hit, that extra push. That's what shock method teaches you, as well as strengthening your tendons, your bones, and your joints to handle this kind of pressure. That's why we're reducing that height. And one thing what you need to know about jumps, drop jumps and pogo jumps, once you figure out the right form, the size of the jump will dramatically reduce, because you notice that there is not enough time for you to generate that amount of force to come up high. And this is also why we are practicing this way, because in a real life situation, when you really need to jump, you don't have time to smoothly go down and smoothly start coming up. So you're gonna go and explode. And so in order for you to be able to explode, you need to train this explosion properly. You need to mimic it in your training session. So when you got the shock method right, the amount of force you can produce will significantly decrease for a short amount of time, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, until you kind of start to feel it and start figuring out how to push it. Now, there is nothing you can do about this, because what you're facing is your brain telling you to ease up because it's not safe. And so if you keep practicing it, as soon as the tendons and the joints are starting to get stronger, as well as your central nervous system starts to understand the movement itself, so the movement becomes more controlled, clearer, and therefore safer, the brain will allow you to go harder and start removing this safety measure, right? In case of athletes who've been jumping with the wrong technique for a period of time, or playing football, sprinting stuff with the wrong technique for a period of time, you guys will have to replace that innate protection with your mind, and you kind of have to hold yourself back a little bit from your maximum effort for about 3 to 4 weeks. So you allow your joints and tendons to really strengthen. And even after that, because you already detrained yourself from this protection mechanism, you have to watch out for upcoming signs of injury, and you have to change and alter your training intensity and training program if you notice something like that. Otherwise, as I said it at the start of the video, you'll probably plateau, or worse, get injured during a session. Yeah, that's about half an hour. That's all the time I had for today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah, keep asking. Post your comments. in the weekly recurring post in the group. Ask your questions there, and I'm just going to come back every single day and list them out. Once a week, you're going to get this video from me. Thank you again. May the force be with you until Christmas.